morning, my friends. How you doing? I am in South Dakota, heading south. It's a little southwest at the moment, and should be in Idaho later today. And I am really enjoying being out west, and I'm really happy about it. The only downside is that I'm facing away from the sunrise, so I can't show it to you today. Someone commented in one of my recent videos, because I was going on and on in the video about how beautiful the sky was, and they were very politely saying, you know, basically, we can't see what you're seeing because the camera doesn't pick up as many colors as the human eye. And I was like, you know, I didn't even think about that. I thought about how when I watch the video back as I'm editing it, I'm looking at it on a smaller screen. I don't edit it on a larger screen. I like to edit with a view that's smaller. I use iMovie for editing. I would really like to move beyond that to a more advanced program at some point, but that's going to require time and a learning curve. iMovie is great though if you're someone who's interested in making videos yourself. I totally recommend it because it's very easy to use, and I am not a technologically inclined person whatsoever, and I was able to learn it. The basic functions of it are really simple. I'm sure I could do a lot more with it than what I do. But my videos are decent enough, you know, they're passable. They're not professional level, but so yeah, going out west, it really stirs up some feelings in me. I lived in California and Nevada growing up, and those were a relatively short number of years compared with my overall life. Like, I've lived in Illinois the vast majority of my life, but because so many impactful things, shall we say, happened during those years, and it was during very formative years that I feel like in my heart I feel so drawn, especially to California. It's a really beautiful state, and I love the landscape of it, and also Nevada. I lived in Nevada as a kid too, and so I was just sitting here thinking about, I was listening to my NPR per usual. I'm having a coffee today. I decided to sort of like, I do tea some days and coffee some days. I think it's better to like, ultimately it's better for me to not drink coffee, but a little bit, as long as I'm not drinking it more than once a day and every day, I think I'm better off. So I'm trying to, harm reduction approach is what I'm trying to use. Let's say that. But I was reflecting on the first time I ever went to California, the first time I ever left, wasn't the first time I left the state of Illinois, actually. Before that, we took a road trip to Nebraska when I was a kid, and to visit my great grandma who lived there, and she was awesome. I talked about her in another video. She was a really strong lady and really just a badass, and she had the coolest name. Her first name was Zora, which I just think is the coolest name ever. You know, that was a relatively boring road trip, and I was pretty young, and so but when I was 7, I think I was 7, we took a flight. It was my first time flying to Southern California, where my grandfather lived. Never knew my grandfather that much. He died when I was pretty young. But we went down there because that was before I think my dad was deciding whether to move us there. And we went to visit my grandfather. We went to the ocean for the first time on that trip, and we went to Disneyland. And I loved it so much. I loved California so much. And it was just, you know, it's one of those weird things that almost makes me think reincarnation is real, because when you're a child and you go to a place but you feel connected to it already, that's how I felt about California. And even driving into this landscape, I'm not anywhere near California yet, but I'm in a western state, or I'm approaching more western states. I don't know, do you consider South Dakota western? I guess the western part of it, maybe. And I start to see mountains, and I start to see this different type of landscape, and I feel the dryness in the air, and I'm just like, oh, this is awesome. This is more of where I feel like I want to be. Of course, Chicago is now fully in my veins, so I could see living my entire life in Chicago as long as I got to live near the lake, probably on the north side, because now that I found myself there, Chicago is it's such an amazing city because each neighborhood has its own character, and there's so many different neighborhoods, and there's so much history there. the north side is its own unique type of space, and I really love it. Culturally, it's really cool. It's very diverse, and I feel like there's Chicago is notoriously very segregated, and in ways that are pretty unfortunate and harmful to a lot of people. But I feel like the north side, and specifically the neighborhood that I've lived in, it's different. It's much more of people being mixed together, which I think is really good. I think the world would be a more peaceful place if more of us spent time with people who are different from us, and then came to the understanding that we're not as different as we think we are. We just have different traditions, we have different styles, we have different cuisines, we have different, stories, but like in terms of our humanity, we all want the same things. We want to be loved, we want to feel respected, we want to feel valued, all that good stuff, So anyway, I'm not trying to go into preachy town. I don't ever want to sound like that. I worry that I do. But I'm going to start singing Kumbaya, and you guys are going to be like, I'm never watching this channel again. I wish the view was a little bit less overcast today, but that's okay. Still beautiful. I should watch my speed a little bit. I am not always the best in hilly places, and I have to really watch it because I'm fully loaded. But I think it's easy out here to get a little relaxed about it, because one of the things, I feel so much more relaxed driving out here because there's so much less, there's just more open space. There are fewer vehicles, way fewer cars, which is a blessing when you're driving a truck. There's so many more grazing animals. Yesterday, I drove past a field of cattle, one of, probably 100 fields of cattle I drove past yesterday. And there were 2 of the cows that were outside the fence, kind of not too close to the road, but closer than I would prefer. And as I passed, they both just sort of stopped what they were doing and looked at me like, what? And I so wanted to get out and say, hi guys, and just like go up to them and see if they would let me pet them. I'm determined to do that at some point on these drives, because I love these cows and I want to say hi to them real bad. And there were also horses and these fields. I'm saying this because, there's plenty of truck drivers who see this and who've driven out west and are like, no duh. But for those of us who haven't driven here, I've never driven through here, period. When I've been in any kind of western state in open land in a car, which I have been, I was a kid, and it was under very traumatic circumstances where I was probably not paying attention to the scenery very much. So coming out here now, it has a special feeling for me, partly because of that. It's like I'm alone, I'm in control, I'm in a situation that I chose to be in, and versus some of the things I experienced when I was a kid. So this is really cool for me. I really love being out here. I was gonna say another thing too. So that trip to Southern California, I wish there was more I could say about it. A couple of things I will say. First of all, that was the first time I ever tasted coffee, and I was immediately in love. I was 7, I'm not kidding. And my dad, in his infinite wisdom, oh Dad, he made mochas for me and I think my older brother. I remember having this, my dad just mixed hot chocolate with probably a tiny bit of coffee. It was probably just enough for taste. I don't know why he thought it would be a good idea to give a 7-year-old coffee, but it was like, we were going to get on an airplane and it was early, and I still actually, like, even though I think that's probably poor judgment, I also, part of me is like, that's pretty cool. He must have thought my palate was advanced enough at 7 to handle it. I don't know. I'm just kidding. I'm I'm reading way too much into it. But no, I remember exactly what it tasted like. It was one of those formative memories, and I loved it immediately. And like, yeah, of course there was chocolate in it, so that helped. I had such a raging sweet tooth as a kid. Like most kids, I would just like sneak and eat sugar every single chance I got. It was so good, and I loved it, and I forever loved coffee after that. And that was well before Starbucks, but then, in the 80s and 90s culture, malls were still a big deal. There was a place that I used to go to and get cappuccinos all the time. What was that place? It was before Starbucks and before Caribou, and I'm blanking on the name of it. But I used to go to this place and get this super sugary cappuccino drink with a bunch of whipped cream on it, of course, because that's how I like a drink like that. Before that, even when I was like 11, I was drinking coffee every day. It was me getting my younger brother off to school. It was just the two of us pretty much. We didn't have a whole lot of supervision at that time. I would get my younger brother ready and I ready to go to school and make us something to eat. And I was 11 and he was, 6? And I made us coffee every day. So my little brother has been drinking coffee since he was 6, and he is upset. He's as into coffee as me, if not more, which I love because I know every time I go to his house, he's prioritizing coffee in a way that I need. So, and I didn't know what I was doing, right? So I would make this coffee so strong. And I remember being in junior high. I was like in 7th grade. It was horrible because junior high is generally horrible. But try being a new kid after like a few months into the school year in 7th grade in a new state, and you came from Reno, Nevada, and you moved to San Jose, California, which those two places are culturally very different. At least they were back then, for sure. And yeah, that was a very high stress time for me. And then I was dumping a bunch of caffeine into my body. And I remember being in like the second period class. I think it was like first period was study hall. Second period was gym, I think. And I remember sweating, and it wasn't because I was working out. It's because I was like caffeinated as hell. Anyway, funny formative memories. So there's some randomness for you. We're, heading into... am I going to go through a little portion of Utah? I think I might. I have to go back and consult my map because per my usual thing, I mean, I have looked over the maps numerous times, but being the geographically challenged person that I am, I don't have the route like totally embedded in my brain. I do have my Garmin kind of zoomed out though, so I can look at it a little more closely. And either way, I'm going to be in I almost said Utah again, in Idaho, and delivering tomorrow morning. I think I actually am going to make it on time to that delivery, even though I got held up yesterday. So that's cool. I'm really enjoying myself. I'm just enjoying the open space, and I'm plotting my future of somehow attempting to move to California again, or move to the west somewhere again. I mean, California is going to be underwater at some point, so shouldn't say that, but who knows, man. Things are getting weird. Anywho, this has been a whole bunch of rambling. I'm going to leave you for now, go back to my coffee and my NPR, and I'm sure I'm going to have some more beautiful scenery to share with you guys. So at such time, I will be sure to do that. And you know, when I get the guts and find the appropriate spot to pull off, I'm going to get out of this truck and I'm going to bring a camera and set it off to the side, and I'm going to very calmly and gently walk up to some cows and see if they will greet me and check me out so I can check them out. I'll try to get that on video if I do that. But there was actually a perfect opportunity yesterday. There was a rest area that was right alongside a huge field that was fenced in, and there were cows there, and I could have parked in the rest area and walked like not even an eighth of a mile like down that fence and just stood along the fence. But I didn't, because I was just trying to keep it moving. So I will talk to you guys later.